Hello, my name is Chris Mann, and in this video, I'll be showing you how to accurately summarize Carl Benjamin's views as expressed in his video titled, Was Enoch Powell Right? In his video, which is linked in the description box, he speaks to a crowd of supporters through a megaphone as he reads from his notes. I'll be using the rules of logical debate to show you where the problems are with some of his statements. I won't spell out the rules of logical debate here, but you can watch my video about those rules by following the link in the description box. The type of analysis I'm doing can be applied to almost any sentence to at least some degree, so I'm going to limit this analysis to the views that stood out to me. Remember, I am rewriting and restating his views, so all of these views are assumed to be implied until they are officially and explicitly stated by him on the record.
Right, so there is a question on everyone's lips.
It is not possible to scientifically prove that the question is on someone's lips, so I'll ignore this claim.
This question is so controversial that just asking it is to brand yourself an outsider, a dissident, and a rogue. The question is about one of the most controversial speeches ever given in this country. It's a question with implications so grave that some consider it a monstrous thing even to think about. The question... Silence. The question is, was Enoch Powell right?
Yes. Yes.
The short answer is how many stabbings make a river?
Because he asked this question, he implied it's not morally bad to ask it. It is not morally bad for a person to ask the question, was Enoch Powell right? With that in mind, remember what he claimed about this question. He implied the question, was Enoch Powell right, is controversial and has grave implications. This implied scientific view is one that I would not say is scientifically provable until some words are defined, but I'll put that concern aside for now. These first two views together imply it is not morally bad for a person to ask a question that is controversial and has grave implications. You can hear some people in the crowd answer yes to his question, but he continues on as if it's not a big deal. This implies that it is not morally bad for a person to not immediately address people who answer yes to the question, was Enoch Powell right? So far, you probably don't know who Enoch Powell is or what he said, but you can make the previous observations in real time regardless of not knowing.
But the long answer is the answer to one politically incorrect line that Powell was quoting from one of his constituents. In this country, in 15 or 20 years' time, the black man will have the whip hand over the white man. I notice you've all gone fucking silent after I said that. Fucking told you.
Let me explain what's going on here. Enoch Powell was a British member of Parliament who, in 1968, gave a speech referred to as the Rivers of Blood speech. During that speech, he recounted a conversation he had with a constituent who expressed concerns about the trends in immigration at that time. According to Enoch Powell, it was his constituent who said, in this country, in 15 or 20 years' time, the black man will have the whip hand over the white man. While Powell didn't make this particular prediction, he made other predictions during his speech, while arguing against so-called anti-discrimination legislation, arguing for the virtual stopping of immigration into the country, and arguing for assisting with the voluntary resettlement of immigrants out of the country. The answer to the question, was Enoch Powell right, depends on which prediction is being attributed to him. One can claim that the relevant prediction is the statistical prediction about the number of immigrants and descendants of immigrants that was projected to be in the country 20 years later, given the trends at the time of the speech. Carl Benjamin, however, seems to be attributing Powell's constituents' prediction to Powell himself. Enoch Powell's prediction was, in this country, in 15 or 20 years' time, the black man will have the whip hand over the white man. He also implied that this line is politically incorrect, but it is not yet clear if he thinks making such a prediction is morally bad. The prediction, in this country in 15 or 20 years' time, the black man will have the whip hand over the white man, is politically incorrect. After quoting the prediction, Benjamin noticed the silence of the crowd and seemed to infer from that the people who said yes to the question, was Enoch Powell right, either misunderstood the question or regretted saying yes. This confusion could be the result of him attributing a different prediction to Powell than those who said yes. The particular people in the video who answered yes to the question, was Enoch Powell right, would not officially and explicitly state on the record that Enoch Powell was right.
As we have seen, to the eternal disgrace of the government's handling of the Windrush scandal, this has not happened. But something similar has.
Benjamin referred to the Windrush scandal as evidence that Enoch Powell was not right. Thousands of descendants of immigrants from the Caribbean that have been living and working in the UK since they were children are now struggling to prove that they are not illegal immigrants after the government destroyed records showing that their parents arrived legally. Benjamin called this scandal a disgrace. It is not morally bad for a person to refer to scandals like the Windrush scandal as disgraces. The occurrence of the Windrush scandal is enough to scientifically prove that Enoch Powell was wrong.
Powell's constituent was right to worry, but as the events have shown in the recent furor of police indifference to a British lady called Janaya English, even being black is no defence. The British government did not place the whip into the hand of the black man. It placed it into the hand of anyone who proudly declared themselves to be anything but British.
Yeah!
He is referring to a black woman who claimed to have gotten death threats for criticizing Islam. In her YouTube video, she claims to have reported these threats to the police, but supposedly they will not investigate their source because they believe she was the one breaking the law by inciting hatred. It is morally bad for a person to not integrate into one's country of residence. It is not morally bad for a person to claim that the British government placed the whip in the hands of any British immigrant who would officially and explicitly state on the record, "I will not integrate."
And like any British person should, instead of being cowed in the face of tyranny, Janaya stood up to be counted among the ranks of those of us who could endure this no more.
What Janaya English stood up to was tyranny. It is morally good for a person to stand up to tyranny.
The British identity is grounded in our ancient traditions of liberty and tolerance, and all other identities that we exist in this country must also be so.
Yes.
The British identity is grounded in the values of liberty and tolerance. It is morally good for a person to publicly advocate for liberty and tolerance.
This country is built on ethnic tensions 1,000 years old.
Yes.
Between the English, the Irish, the Scots and the Welsh, and all the subdivisions thereof.
Ethnic tensions exist in the UK, and they have for 1,000 years.
These tensions synthesized themselves into a British creed that all identities, all beliefs are permissible, and it is the harm that is punishable.
Based on this, I'll revise his previously implied moral view with a more refined one. It is morally good for a person to publicly advocate for liberty and tolerance for all identities and all beliefs.
And that harm can only be done by action and not by words.
Yeah.
It is morally bad for a person to do harm through physical actions, not words. It seems that making death threats like the ones Joniah English reported would not count as morally bad in his view.
These identities and values matter.
A person's identities and values matter. It is not morally bad for a person to claim that someone's identities and values matter. This is relevant to the issues of Black Lives Matter and identity politics in general. It is not yet clear if he defines "to matter" in such a way that it is scientifically provable.
It was the identity of Muslim that allowed the men who formed grooming gangs to enact religiously sanctioned campaign of assaults against children, targeted for their ethnic characteristics. White and Sikh girls were targeted because they fell outside of the Muslim identity and therefore warranted no moral consideration. What the men convicted of these crimes did falls directly in line with our definition of a hate crime, and yet they were not charged as such.
I'm not sure what he is basing these accusations on, but there was a case a few years ago in which 6 Muslim men were charged with and pled guilty to paying for sex or attempting to pay for sex with a Sikh girl who was a minor at the time. A BBC documentary includes this girl's story while describing a wider trend in which it is alleged that organized gangs of Muslim men target Sikh girls and blackmail them into prostitution rings because they are easy targets. A particular BBC documentary in which people allege that organized gangs of Muslim men target Sikh girls for sex crimes is enough to scientifically prove that 6 particular men are guilty of hate crimes. The fact that 6 particular men are guilty of hate crimes is enough to scientifically prove that a person's identities and values matter. Now we have some idea of his standards of evidence. I can speculate that if an allegation is good enough to make it into a BBC documentary, as far as he's concerned, it may as well be true. If there is a BBC documentary in which some black people allege that some particular white cops in America commit hate crimes, maybe he would declare that those cops are guilty and that Black Lives Matter or that black identities matter. According to his definition, whether or not something matters seems to depend partially on whether or not BBC documentaries about it exist. So his definition of "to matter" is at least partially scientifically provable.
It is one rule for one and another rule for another. This is not an acceptable state of affairs in a liberal democracy. All citizens should be treated without distinction by the state. In order to fulfill Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream of a world where people are judged by the content of their character. To do anything else is to encourage the proliferation of nefarious elements in society. People who earn their stations in life through means other than hard work and decency.
It is not morally bad for a person to publicly advocate for the equal treatment of all citizens before the law. It is morally bad for a person to not publicly advocate for the equal treatment of all citizens before the law.
It confers on a certain group a set of privileges not enjoyed by the rest. This will breed resentment of the kind that eventually brings out guillotines. Hate speech laws are incubating something very dark and very angry in this country.
It is not morally bad for a person to publicly advocate against hate speech laws.
Tommy Robinson is not a racist, he is a warning.
Tommy Robinson does not act like a racist. It is not clear from this what his definition of "to act like a racist" is, and if that is scientifically provable.
They have criminalized legitimate criticism of an ideology that is not liberal, not tolerant, and places itself the identity of the British.
It is not morally bad for a person to criticize an ideology that is not liberal, not tolerant, and places itself in direct opposition to the identity of the British. It is not clear from this alone what he would call that particular ideology. Does he intend to distinguish between Islam, which is the religion in general, and Islamism, which is the ideology in which one seeks to force one's own version of Islam on others?
But they have gone even further than this, and they have now criminalized humor. Ron Liddell made a joke about the Welsh in the Sunday Times, about how a bridge across the Severn connects Wales to the First World. A very good joke.
Here he's talking about the criticism a columnist is getting, after implying that Wales is not part of the First World. Some people are calling for his statement to be treated as illegal hate speech, but it is not currently illegal. It is now illegal in the UK to imply that Wales is not part of the First World. To imply that Wales is not part of the First World is to tell a joke. It is not morally bad for a person to tell a joke. Of course, these statements hinge on his definition of to tell a joke, but using the normal definition, it is not possible to scientifically prove that a person is telling a joke. According to the rules of logical debate, each participant is required to maintain that their views are true and logical until they change their minds. Therefore, if you make a false statement and then later claim that that statement was a joke and that it's untrue, that still counts as you changing your mind. To avoid changing your mind, you must declare your joke ahead of time and declare when the joke has ended. For example, joke start. I am a registered Democrat. Joke end. I'm not a registered Democrat.
Ethnic jokes serve one purpose: to diffuse ethnic tensions by normalizing the differences between ethnicities. If we are not free to offend one another, we are not free to make the kind of ethnic jokes that strengthen the social fabric of this country.
Ethnic jokes serve only to diffuse ethnic tensions or strengthen social fabric. It is morally good for a person to tell an ethnic joke. CB41 seems to be in tension with CB56. In fact, CB41 also seems to be in tension with his disparaging use of slurs in other videos.
It's not acceptable to call me a nigger.
Why would you begin our conversation like that? It kind of makes me think that you want the internet to open up with a big bunch of memes on your ass, calling you a nigger. It's not personal, no one really thinks you're a nigger. It's just that you've turned around and said, it's not acceptable to call me a nigger. And no one fucking knows you, dude. You're wearing a suit and tie. No one thinks you're like some gangster or anything. But if this video carries on like it does, I'm going to have a real hard time not posting deliberately offensive content because I know people like you are going to get offended. Ah, look what you've made me do. Look, this, if you hadn't provoked me, if you had just kept your whore mouth shut, I wouldn't be putting a picture with the words gay niggers from outer space over your face.
To call me a chink.
Aha! Ha 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 ha! Ha ha ha! You lose! It's actually fine. It's actually just fucking fine, and I'll tell you why. Because Asians are privileged. In almost every walk of life, Asians make more money, they have better results, and they do better in life than me, just a dumbass cracker. So, when Asians are filling up all of those top spots in better proportion than white people, you have to understand, you have institutional privilege over me. I mean, you're using your platform to lecture me now. So, fuck off, chink. It's okay for me to call you this, because racism is power plus prejudice. I don't have the power in this situation. The chinks do. Sorry, I don't make the rules.
To call me a fag.
Oh, fuck off, you fag.
The R word is the same as every minority slur.
Oh, well, great job trivializing minority slurs, you nigger spick fag chink kike retard. See, look, this is what I mean about the chat. I just can't be bothered to deal with people who treat me like this. It's really annoying. Like, you are acting like a bunch of niggers, just so you know. You act like white niggers. Exactly how you describe black people acting is the impression I get dealing with the alt-right. Look, you carry on, but don't expect me to then have a debate with one of your faggots. Then why would I bother? Like, why would I bother? You act like an upper-class type. Now, maybe you're just acting like a nigger, mate. Have you considered that? Do you think white people act like this? White people are meant to be polite and respectful to one another, and you guys can't even act like white people. It's really, like, amazing to me.
If we are not free to offend one another, we are not free to make the kind of ethnic jokes that strengthen the social fabric of this country. Without the freedom to offend, we create a series of armed camps, each watching the others for any signs of transgression, both obsessed with defending the honor of their respective tribe. This can only divide a country by setting us apart from one another and making us strangers to our neighbors.
It is morally bad for a person to criticize someone for telling an ethnic joke. Alright, that's it for this video. Stay tuned for the next in this series of accurately summarizing people's statements. My Patreon page can be found at patreon.com/chrismann. That's patreon.com/KRISMANN. Until next time.